Hi there, this is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. And I'm very excited to have attorney Tim Stickradt with us today from HS&A. And we are going to be talking about something that you may have wondered about in the past. I'm sure you've all been driving down the road and heard a commercial on your card about, on your car radio about debt settlement and how you don't have to pay the credit cards back. This is what they don't want you to know. We're going to be talking about what those programs are really about. And I want to thank you so much today for joining us, Tim. We're so happy to have you back on the show.
My pleasure to be here, Erica. Good to see you again.
Great to see you. So let's talk about this debt settlement situation. I mean, you help people file for bankruptcy, and I guess let's start off with just what's an overview of what's the difference between bankruptcy and debt settlement?
Well, the main difference is when you file bankruptcy, you're seeking to have a court discharge your debt. And discharge means the court deems that the debt doesn't exist anymore. It's erased, it's gone for good. With debt settlement, what you're doing is you're trying to reduce your debts by offering a creditor less than the full amount owed in return for them forgiving the balance of the debt. So if you owe a creditor $10,000, you may say, hey, I'll pay you $4 if you make the $6 go away. And if they accept that, that's a debt settlement.
Wow, I mean, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Let's start off with, what do those programs usually offer? Can you write everything off that you have as a debt?
Well, that's just it. If you're contemplating doing debt settlement, you can do it one of two ways. You can hire a company to do it, or you could try to do it on your own. Now, if you hire a company to do it, you want to make sure you understand what it is that they're going to do for you and how much of the debt they can settle. And if you don't understand those things, you might find yourself really not coming out of it in a better spot than when you came in, for a variety of reasons. A lot of it, if I were to go into a debt settlement, I think one of the biggest things I would consider is, number one, how much debt I have, and also how many creditors I have. What I mean by that is, if I just have one credit card that I've just been paying away at forever, and the balance is going nowhere, and I still owe $4,000, and that's the only debt I have, well, it's probably not enough money to file bankruptcy over. And there's really no point in hiring a debt settlement company. I could call that credit card and say, hey, look, can I just pay you $2,000 to make it go away? And they either say yes or they say no. There's no magic wand or anything like that. If you've got more debt than that, and this is usually when people go into these debt settlements with these companies, they'll go in and they'll hear, like you said, driving along on the road, they'll hear a radio ad. These radio ads sound great. They promise people that they can teach them the secrets that the credit card companies don't want them to know. They can get rid of their debts without having to file bankruptcy, is usually how they phrase it. And it sounds fantastic. It sounds like there is some kind of magic pill out there. And the reality of the matter is that there isn't. What these debt consolidation companies will do is I like to speak with examples so you can kind of, I like to illustrate my point.
Absolutely.
Let's just say that you have $50,000 in credit card debt, okay? And you've been making your monthly payments, or maybe you haven't been, but either way, it's not affordable at the moment. You can't keep up with it. So you contact one of these debt consolidation companies, these debt settlement companies, sometimes they call themselves, and you say, hey, what can you do? And they say, well, great news. Right now, your monthly minimums on this $50,000 is about $1,200 a month when you add it all together. For $500 a month, over usually it's 3 or 4 years, we can make this go away. Okay, well, that just sounds great. Let's do it right now. Okay, great. And so you start to pay them $500 a month. And what they're doing is they're holding the money, just hanging on to it until they have enough money to settle with one of the credit card companies. So to make the math easy, let's say you have 5 credit cards and you owe $10,000 a piece, totaling up to my $50,000. So credit card A, they're talking to credit card A, and credit card A says, yeah, we'll take 50 cents on the dollar. Once you have $5,000, we'll call it even. And so you're paying the money into this company every month, and after 10 months, you got $5,000. Okay. Well, first of all, the company that you're paying has to deduct their fees, which are usually up to 10%. So really, there's only $4,500 in there. So you got to pay another month in. And then when they have that $5,000, then they'll send a check to company A, and company A then will forgive the other $5,000 you owe. Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it sounds like a good plan. You've saved money. And then once they've done that, they move on to company B, and then C, D, and E. And that's all fine. But there are some problems and some real landmines out there that debt consolidation companies usually don't tell you about. One is that they probably won't be able to settle with all your creditors. Now, sometimes they will, but not always. And if companies D and E don't want to settle, well, you've got to keep paying them. And usually if you're doing that, then you don't have enough money to pay the debt settlement people. And so it doesn't work. So the debt settlement people will tell you, well, just stop paying them. We'll get to them. And actually, they'll tell you that at the outset, because most banks won't settle a debt until you're at least 90 days delinquent. So if you come into this program and you're current with your debts, they'll say, okay, well, don't make a payment for 3 months, and then we can start our process. So
can I ask you a quick question there?
Sure.
So they say don't make a payment for 3 months, and in the meantime, are you going from being a person that probably was making the small payments all the time, just wasn't whittling away the debt, to now having some bad marks on your credit score?
Yes, that's exactly where I was going with that. So when you stop making the payments, yeah, after 1 month, your credit score, let's say you're at 750. After 1 month of not making those payments, you're probably lucky to be at 680. After 3 months, you're probably at 500. I mean, your credit score is tanked. That's not your biggest problem. And most of the time when you go into the settlement program, you've already missed payments. So the credit score part's really not the problem, but they will tell you that. And you do have to be delinquent in order for the banks to negotiate. And think about it. If you're making payments on time to a creditor every month and they're able to charge you their interest rate, why would they have any incentive to settle with you? I mean, that's just money, free money coming into them now. And so that's why they make you fall behind. So that's one problem. The other problem is if they can't settle with all 5 of these creditors, and now you've fallen behind, right? Let's say you're still in the process of settling with creditor A. You're still trying to pay that first $5,000 in. Well, creditor D, who said no to the deal, they're not going to settle with you. You know, after not 10 months, but after 2 or 3, 4, 5 months, they're probably going to sue you. And then they're going to get a judgment against you. And the first thing they're going to do, if you're working, is they're going to try and get a wage garnishment attached so that they can take 25% of your paycheck. Well, if they're taking 25% of your paycheck, can you still afford to pay the debt settlement people? Probably not. So now the entire program implodes and you're right back where you were, but you're out a few $1,000s that you wouldn't have been out had you not done this. So that's another big problem. And so you have to be careful going into these things, that you know what the success rate is. That the company that you're talking to looks and sees and tells you, I can guarantee I can settle with all these creditors, and get that guarantee in writing.
Well, can I ask you a question then? So you've given us so you've got, let's say you had 5 credit cards, 2 of them won't settle because maybe you're making the payments on time and they like it, like you mentioned. Are there any other reasons that they wouldn't settle with a debt settlement company?
Well, it may be a policy that they won't settle. Some banks, after 6 months, will just sell the debt to a collection company for 10 cents on the dollar, and so they just take themselves out of it. And those companies that buy up the debt, they're even more aggressive than the banks. I mean, they will go after you quickly. they'll file their lawsuit without looking back and thinking twice. Another problem you might have is that even though company A settled for 50 cents on the dollar, company B wants 80 cents on the dollar, or they want, or they want the money faster. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's nothing that you can do to force these companies to take the same amount of money and to hold off for the same period of time. It's a negotiating factor, or it's a negotiation between your settlement company and the creditor, and each creditor is going to have different standards for that. So that's why I think it's really hard for the settlement to work, and it's really important that you ask these questions and make sure you get a straight answer, and that straight answer is in writing. And my guess is that it won't be. My guess is that if you read your contract and read the small print, unfortunately, it's going to tell you that there is no guarantee that these types of things could happen. They're going to have all these disclaimers out there, so they're probably not going to be really forthwith with giving you this information as they're discussing and trying to sell you on the prospect of doing it for you.
Now, I know that you had been talking about some of the gotchas, and one, obviously, if you're not a reader of fine print, and you were just had a dream of getting out from under all this debt that they are selling you, then you may not want to do a lot of research because you don't want to believe that what they're telling you might not be true. And there was one really interesting fact that you gave me about the taxes at the end of the year. Can you tell us, is this resolved debt considered income? Is it taxable?
Well, that's a great question. And that's another fine print item. And whether it's in the contract or not, I don't know, but it's probably a fine print disclaimer. When you settle a debt, all right, again, back to my example. If you owe company A $10,000 and they accept $5,000 in return for forgiving the other $5,000, the $5,000 that they have forgiven is taxable income. In other words, you will receive a 1099 at the end of the year for that $5,000, and you have to claim that on your taxes as untaxed income. And so if you make $50,000 a year and you normally get a tax refund of, say, $3,000 at the end of the year, and suddenly you settle the debt and there's $5,000 that you haven't, that you didn't pay taxes on because you settled this debt. So you've got this W-2. Now you've made $55,000, $5,000 of which is not taxed. That can really eat into your tax refund. And in some cases, it can completely eliminate your tax refund. Or if you're a person who doesn't get a tax refund, let's say you break even, you're close to even, well, then you can even create a tax liability for yourself. And so, again, that may be okay with you, but it would be nice to know about that consequence going into it. And I think that's one of the things that the tax settle or the debt settlement people really aren't eager to tell you about when they're giving you their sales pitch. So it's an important question to ask. Am I going to be taxed on the forgiven debt?
Absolutely. Now, it seems like from what you've told me, there are a lot of reasons and ways for this program to implode on the consumer who is buying into it. And, I'm just wondering, what's the percentage of failure? And, obviously, that might not be something that people even ask about. And I wanted to know too, when you're talking about bankruptcy, you're a lawyer, you guys handle the whole picture, and we're going to talk about exactly like what your process is in a moment. But you have consequences for not following the rules. I wonder, with these programs, is there anyone watching, and do they have consequences? So the percentage of failure, and do they have consequences?
Yeah, so as far as the percentage of failure, I don't know the answer to that, but it is a question that I would ask them. I might say, hey, what is your success rate? Or how many of, what percentage of your cases don't complete the program? And see if they'll even give you an answer. My guess is they'll probably dance around that question give you some general answer. I don't know the stats on that. What I can tell you on that end though is I see people every week who have started a credit settlement program, a debt settlement program, who are currently in one, participating in one, and it's not working for the same reasons as I just gave you. And the biggest reason is because one or two or more of the creditors didn't want to participate and have since taken legal action against my client and are suing them or garnishing them already. And so now, like I said, they just can't afford to make the payment. So I see that failure a lot. And the sad thing is that a lot of them have invested a lot of money into this. Maybe they've been in the program for 6 months, a year, 2 years even. And if you think about that, at $500 a month, I mean, that's a lot of money that they've paid in for literally no result other than maybe having to pay more taxes at the end of the year. Conversely, if they file bankruptcy or had they filed bankruptcy before just to wipe out those debts, not only would they be done at a fraction of the cost, mind you, but they wouldn't have any tax consequences at all. So, I mean, tread carefully on this because it's usually not a good idea. Your second question was, is there a governing body or someone that oversees them? I don't think that there is, and if there is, it's really loosely enforced. Again, for the reasons I've told you about, they're not putting legitimate information out in many cases. There's a nice ad that makes things sound really, really good, really, really beneficial, without talking about any of the downsides. What I do as a lawyer is, first of all, I'm licensed by the state of Michigan. The state bar licenses me to do this, to practice law, to help people. And if I violate the public trust, if I break ethics codes, if I don't follow along with my guidelines, I can lose my license and I can't feed my kids anymore. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. And honestly, even almost more important than that is the fact that I don't want to mislead people. When people come in to see me, look, if I can help you, I will and I want to. But if I can't, or if there's something better out there, I'm going to tell you about it. Because the last thing I want is a client who's not happy with me. I don't want that. I don't need that. It's not worth it to me. If there's a better solution out there, and that happens all the time. Someone will come in for a consult, and I'll say, yeah, we can do this, but you might be better off doing this, whatever that might be. And sometimes it's actually debt settlement too, believe it or not. If, again, under that first scenario I described, where it's a small amount of debt or a small number of creditors. But yeah, I don't think there is really any oversight for this. It's kind of the Wild West when it comes to these guys. And they're, in my mind, they can be predatory. I'm not saying they all are, but I've seen some circumstances where I can't come up with any other word to use than predatory, based on the way the program just devolved for the person that agreed to it. I mean, they're paying excess fees and they've paid in forever and none of the money's gone to the right places and they're still being sued. I mean, that's not really helpful. And one more thing on that too. A lot of them will say that they're nonprofit organizations, and this is another one that's quasi dishonest. Because they may truly legally be nonprofit, okay? But nonprofit doesn't mean that that someone's not making money, that you're not paying a fee. It's not free. So don't get confused when they say nonprofit. Some of that money they're still going to keep. So the $5,000 that you paid, the $10,000, the $20,000 that you paid in, that's not all going to the good. They're withholding some of that. Maybe it's for their costs, it's for their employees, it's for them. I don't know. But be very cautious about that. Nonprofit does not mean free.
Well, I mean, I think that those are all really great points. And, you and I have had a lot of conversations. And one of the things that strikes me as different, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that, you've used the word predatory. Obviously, they've got commercials. They're very smooth in how they sound and what they say. But, in the process of your intake of people coming in and asking about bankruptcy, you really sit down with people and come up with the pros and the cons, and you decide whether they even need your services. And sometimes the answer is no. You're certainly not putting someone in a situation where they're going to make their credit worse by not paying certain creditors. I mean, there's a whole process involved where you can legally stop paying them by, having an automatic stay placed, for example, and that's completely legal and it's not going to harm you further. I mean, you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but just the difference that I'm seeing is that you care and you're trying to find the right solution, whereas that is all they have to sell is this program that may or may not work and may or may not have some terrible side effects for them later on.
Right. Yeah. And part of it, I think, is that when you're dealing with us, you're dealing with, there's six of us here. There's six people here. You get to know each one of us by first name, by face. You're talking to us in ordinary times, face to face. We're shaking hands, sometimes hugging. Not now, right? Of course, but with the debt settlement people, you're not. You're on the phone, or you're emailing, or you're probably never going to see a face. You're not going into an office. You're not sitting down with somebody. It's not structured like that. It's just it's a hit and run type thing. And
it's a call center, right? I mean, there's just call centers of people usually.
Right. And you may not be dealing with the same person every time, or you may not even cycle back to the same person ever. I don't know that. There may be some that you do, but I doubt it. So you don't get that same feeling of comfort. And also, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. When you come in to see us, the first thing we do is we want to hear about your problem. We want to hear all about it in your words. We want to hear what the cause of it is. We want to hear, what your goals are, how you want to attack it, and what your best outcome in your mind would be. We do all that before we get into any of the nuts and bolts of what we can do, because, yeah, you're right. You may not need to file bankruptcy. It may not be the best move for you. It may be the only thing that you can do, and it may be a great thing for you. We don't know that until we really delve into it and get all that information. And then once we do is we talk about what it is we can do and how it works, and lay it all on the line. And all of that comes first. That's at no cost. Like, when I consult with somebody, I want to see to it that I fully understand their problem. I know the ins and outs of it, and I know that I can help them, and they know not only that I can help them, but exactly what I can provide. And we get to that point, before we're even talking about any money exchanging hands, I want to make sure that I've created enough value for that person to want to hire me to do the work and provide the service. And then we can lay it out exactly how it's going to play out. See, with bankruptcy, you've got the law on your side. You've got a federal court, a federal judge that's on your side, that basically stands up for you if any creditor violates the bankruptcy stay. If you file bankruptcy, your creditors have to leave you alone. If you go into debt settlement, they don't. Okay? The law protects you in bankruptcy. And if any of those creditors so much as even hint to violating that protection, the federal bankruptcy judge will get involved and fine them and sanction them. You've got everything working for you in a bankruptcy once you've filed. And you really don't have anything else but someone's word and their questionable negotiation tactics when you go into debt settlement.
I think that those are all very good points. And I'm going to put up a graphic just to show people the differences that you just discussed, as well as some of the questions that they should ask during this video, because it's I think it's important that people know and really take a good look at themselves and their situation, and whether they need to do any of those programs, or to decide which one's going to be best for them. I mean, would you agree? I mean, it's so much information, and I think it's great information, and I just think there's a lack of knowledge and research that goes into it before they jump in.
No question about it. It's impulsive by design. They dangle that carrot out there so that you can't say no. It's too good to be true.
Well, but that's great. So it looks like, I mean, these are the questions I have. The last question I mean, I guess I just want to hit that home a little bit more. It's like why people jump in on this kind of program, and who is most likely to jump in on this program? Is there a certain, is it mostly elderly people? Is it students? I mean, what's the situation typically?
Uh, I mean, if I had to give you a demographic, I would say there's more people over 45 than under 45, and I'm kind of using that as an arbitrary age. I think that there's a lingering notion out there that bankruptcy is just inherently bad. Now, that's not true. Bankruptcy is not bad. Bankruptcy is good, actually, because it fixes a problem.
Hmm.
Bankruptcy doesn't just happen to a person. You don't just walk down the street and get hit by a bankruptcy. You know, you've got several things leading up to that, and then you decide to file bankruptcy for relief, to invoke your federal laws, your privileges, to use them to your advantage, like you should. It's just out there as a relief mechanism. But I think there's that lingering notion that, oh my God, anything but bankruptcy. Gosh, take all my money, take my house. Just don't make it bankruptcy. And I think that's less and less the case with the younger generation, with the people in their 20s and 30s now. And I say that because they just, younger people tend to just say, like, you know, let's just get this over with. I'm young. I want to be done with it. I understand. I'll get it back. And they're right about that. They're right about that. So I would love to change that narrative. I would love to change that because it's a false narrative. It's bankruptcy is not bad. Again, nobody wakes up in the morning saying, I hope someday I get to file bankruptcy. That's not what I mean. But it's a good thing that's there that can help you out of a lot of problems when they come to you. And those problems hit you out of left field. You don't know they're coming. You get sick, you get divorced, you lose your job, you lose your business. Some pandemic hits and you can't afford to pay your bills because no one's making any money anymore. I mean, this stuff happens. You don't see it coming, it just happens. And when it happens, you've got that safeguard there that is a guarantee, and that's bankruptcy.
Well, I think that that's great, and you are so knowledgeable and so patient with going through all of these details and the pros and the cons, and the fact that you are willing to say that it's not for everyone. It just really says a lot about you and about your firm, and how much you care about the people making the right decision. I mean, that's really what you should be able to count on when you're going to, go to a professional for help. You should be able to count on them giving you the pros and the cons, and not just having a special interest in pushing one program or another. And you really want the people that come to you to have a bright future, and if it's the right program for them. If it's not, then I know that you give people that advice too. And so I'd strongly recommend anybody out there that's considering one of these debt settlement programs to also go in and talk to HS&A, because they can sit down and talk about the pros and cons with you and give you all of the details that you need, and in order to make a good decision. Unlike, someone that you're just going to talk to over the phone that's in a call center, most likely, that you're never going to talk to again. There's a huge difference. And so I'm not sure, am I missing anything, Tim? We went through so many great details today.
No, Erica, I think we've covered it. It's just up to people to do their homework, to ask these questions. If they're ask the debt settlement people these questions. Ask me these questions too. When you come here, I don't want you to hire me till I know what it is we need to do, until you understand it. So ask the questions, no matter what you decide to do, no matter what remedy you might think is best. Ask the questions, and ask the hard questions too. I mean, there's no bad, and if you're not getting an answer, or you're not getting a straight answer, I mean, you should really be, that should be a red flag for you. If someone's dancing around answering a question, or trying to spin what the way the conversation goes, that needs to be a red flag. Whether it's a debt settlement or an attorney or anybody else that you encounter that's trying to sell you a service, always ask those questions and make sure you're satisfied with the answer. Make sure you've established at least a trusting relationship with someone before you hire them.
I think that is great advice. I want to thank you so much again for joining us today, Tim. I know that people are going to be calling you in the future with any questions that they have on bankruptcy versus debt settlement program, and what the best program is for them. So I want to thank you so much for joining us again. I'm looking forward to our next topic. I know we're thinking of doing a really great panel that has to do with divorce and bankruptcy coming up in the next couple of weeks. So everybody should, look forward to that. And we will look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, looking forward to it too. Sounds great, Erica. Thank you.